We hear from a number of countries that X percentage of them are reported as not having symptoms, or that they are in their pre-symptomatic phase, which means it's a few days before they actually develop severe symptoms. In a number of countries, when we go back and we discuss with them, one, how are these asymptomatic cases being identified? Many of them are being identified through contact tracing. And so, which is what we would want to see, in that you have a known case, you find your contacts, they're already in quarantine, hopefully, and some of them are tested, and then you pick up people who may have asymptomatic or no symptoms or even mild symptoms. The other thing we're finding is that when we actually go back and say how many of them were truly asymptomatic, we find out that many have really mild disease, very mild disease. They're not quote-unquote COVID symptoms, meaning they may not have developed fever yet, they may not have had a significant cough, or they may not have shortness of breath, but some may have mild disease. Having said that, we do know that there can be people that are truly asymptomatic and PCR positive. The second part of your question is what proportion of asymptomatic individuals actually transmit. So the way that we look at that is we look at these individuals need to be followed carefully over the course of when they're detected and looking at secondary transmission. We have a number of reports from countries who are doing very detailed contact tracing. They're following asymptomatic cases, they're following contacts, and they're not finding secondary transmission onward. It's very rare. And that much of that is not published in the literature. From the papers that are published, there is one that came out from Singapore, looking at a long-term care facility. There are some household transmission studies where you follow individuals over time and you look at the proportion of those that transmit onwards.
A viral hotspot erupts in a South Korean nightclub district. Dozens come down with COVID-19, and quickly authorities trace the origin to one man. How did they find him? They analyzed the GPS signal of his phone and saw everyone he'd been near. In China, millions are being watched in a similar fashion. And now in the U.S., too, vigorous efforts are underway to expand contact tracing. In New Orleans, anyone eating in a restaurant will be required to hand over their information.
Restaurants should retain a name and contact number for over 21 days.
Contact tracing, whether through electronic apps or interviews with patients, consists of sorting out the physical social network of an infected person, then asking or maybe even compelling exposed people to quarantine. Health officials say it certainly works. In this Japanese experiment, a group of diners was unaware one of them had an invisible paint on his hands. But when a special light was turned on, it was clear how many had been symbolically infected. Real-world studies found the same thing with COVID-19. Professor Aaron Bramage notes one diner in a restaurant infecting 9 others nearby. An outbreak in a call center, jumping from one worker to the next to the next.
I want to strongly encourage you to participate in the contact tracing program.
So many government officials argue contact tracing is essential.
It is the next major step in our effort to defeat the COVID virus.
But privacy advocates say the same tools for tracking the virus could be used to discover political activity, religious affiliations, private relationships. And a Washington Post poll found nearly 3 in 5 Americans say they are either unable or unwilling to use the infection alert system under development by Google and Apple.
Trust really matters in combating a pandemic, and people won't feel trusting of the system if it's not based on a public health need and are not very robust privacy and security protections built into any tool that we might use.